Welcome back to another exciting episode of the podcast. We are joined by a very special guest. Please welcome Gray Zone journalist, Mr. Aaron Maté, to the show.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Thanks. Is it really?
It's great to be here. Please, okay. I'm a fan of your comedy.
Thanks.
And also, to speak in an actual studio, that's a rare thing. I don't get too many invitations. So
really,
at least everything's over Zoom now, StreamYard. So
yeah.
It's cool to be face to face.
It's cool to just come in here, and we don't have any beer.
You got water. It's fantastic water.
Yeah, maybe someday we'll bring in some eye candy.
Hey,
the budget is
sure.
We have a higher budget.
Sure.
It'll be more of like we're trying to build something here. We're trying to build like a real talk radio type of environment, because you're a huge because we hung out a few weeks ago. I didn't know you were such a big comedy fan.
Die Hard.
Yeah,
I would say Die Hard. I love comedy, and it's like one of the last places left where people can actually tell the truth, and also we can all just laugh at ourselves, which we all need to do.
But we're also stupid
comedians.
Yeah.
I mean, in person, I find comedians difficult. Like I've met a few comedians who I love, and afterwards I was like, God, I really shouldn't have met them. I just would much rather.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're a great guy. I mean, you can chop it up, and you're a normal guy. But
you can like shit on me if you want.
Well, I'll take any opportunity I can. Yeah, sure, but
call me a fat wop or whatever.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for creating that safe space for me.
People do like that.
Yeah. No. Sure.
Yeah.
But
talk about my family.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
You can. But you're the only person.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. So. Yeah. But I mean, you know better than me. Comedians are crazy.
Well, it's a shame that we're all just kind of like dumb.
Yeah.
Like I went over to the Stand a couple weeks ago, and I ran into a comic that I like a lot. I like her husband a lot. And she was like, "Oh, I heard that you hate Jews." And it's it's just funny because everybody, I mean, we're all pursuing we want the laughs and we want the next career thing. But there's a lot of people that I know that are very funny, and I go, "Man, you'd be like a star if you were like 8% more intelligent." It's a shame.
Well, I've always wondered how you can have a conscience and still be funny. Right. Because, once you come across someone who has a political message, then it's really hard for them, I think, to not be didactic because they care about the politics. So how do you, avoid try to ram your message down people's throats? But so the comedians like yourself who can do that, who have, you obviously have your political views, but you're not just all centered around that. You're just focused on what's funny. I find that to be really impressive because for me, all I can think about is my political message, and and that's what I'm always focused on. And it's hard to find. It's hard. I'll try sometimes to look at the angle, like what's funny here, but I just I got nothing. I can't find anything.
I think a big part of it is kind of like knowing where you stand, but also understanding that like being on the nose is not what's going to make people laugh.
No.
So finding the way to say the stuff that you want to say is kind of I guess that's the challenging part about it.
Yeah.
But so I do want to ask you about this. So yesterday, the CEO of United Healthcare was shot to death, and I showed my kid a picture of the shooting, and I said,
"And you did that? Why?
What?
You decided I have this child who I'm raising. I'm going to show my child a picture of a murder.
Yeah.
Why?
I'm a little bit. I'd like to treat him like an adult.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old is he?
He's 3.5.
Okay.
So sometimes I go, Benny, who do we hate? And he goes, Israel, because she kills kids.
That's right. Yeah.
And then he was like scrolling through my phone the other day, swiping through my pictures. And I did have a picture of a dead child on my phone. My wife goes, "Oh my God." I said, "Benny, Israel killed that kid." So I'm not like extreme about it, but I do try to treat him like an adult.
Some Zionists and child services is watching this, and they're thinking like, how can we seize this child? Can we make a case that that this man is indoctrinating his kid to hate Israel?
They really haven't bothered me that much. It's odd. Do they bother you?
Like the Zios?
Yeah.
Well, to any extent that I feel threatened or no. I mean, I get some mean messages and some threats, but I don't take them seriously. I don't think anyone's going to do anything.
Yeah, I haven't gotten any threat. Well, maybe like a handful from like a couple.
But in your case, I mean, working in a field, comedy that there are a lot of powerful Jews, and I can say that as a Jew. It's it's just true. Like I mean, I'm sure you're risking consequences. For me, if I was working in like traditional establishment media, I wouldn't be able to say anything. I'm independent, so I can say what I want. But they don't make it easy for you when you speak out for Palestine.
They don't, but I'm also like independent.
Yeah, well, thank God.
And
Yeah. But back to why you were showing your kid the photo of a murder in Midtown Manhattan.
Because I try to treat him like an adult.
Yes.
I try to give him a good framework. It took me a while to arrive where I am politically.
So you want to speed it up. You want to indoctrinate. Yeah. I got you. Okay.
Yeah. And so I showed him the picture and I said, Benny, that guy's good. And that guy's, no, I said, that's the bad guy. And that's the guy that we like the guy shooting him. And he was like, he's good. And I said, yeah, he's good and he's bad.
Wow.
I said the good guy killed the bad
guy.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know if a lot of it sticks, but some of it, does, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can't endorse murder. I'm not a fan of murder, even if the victim is the head of a company that does, kill people for a living. That's what insurance people do, is they deny vital health care to people and they die. That's an established thing. But this is we know now from the crime scene that on the bullet casings, it was, some words were written like deny, defend, depose. And that was a play on, the insurance company playbook of deny, defend, and one more thing. It wasn't depose. It was
delay.
Delay. Yes. Yeah. Yes. So obviously that tells you that this is probably a political, like a ideologically motivated hit job, or someone wanted to make a statement about insurance companies and their role in society, their negative role. And look, what just happened? Like Anthem, the company Anthem, and just announced like all of a sudden, they're like, I have it here. Basically, this is breaking. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield reverses decision to put a time limit on anesthesia. So this was announced today. Is it a coincidence? Maybe. But if I were a healthcare CEO, I'd be shook. I'd be totally afraid.
They just announced it today after the guy got killed? Yeah. So they're trying to, it's like a fuck you to us.
Well, I thought they're, no, I think they're reversing that. Like they put a time limit on anesthesia, like saying there's only a certain amount of time you can get it for. Now they're reversing that decision. Okay. So I think they're saying, hey, are we good? Like we're on your, don't come after us.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just, and that's the sad thing about a world that is based on ripping people off and profiteering and violence and inequality, is sometimes violence, works. And it sends a message. Like I was thinking about Aaron Bushnell, the young American who burned himself alive to protest the genocide in Gaza. Him burning himself alive didn't have a big impact beyond the pro-Palestine community. His name is not like etched in everyone's memory beyond like those who care about the genocide. But if Aaron Bushnell had killed somebody, if he had killed somebody aside from just himself, he would have had a bigger impact. That's just the sad truth, I think.
Yeah, but I guess a guy like that didn't want to hurt
because he's such a good guy. He's such a sweet person. I know. But I'm just saying it's the grim reality of the world we're in, where violence does have an impact, and that certainly applies to the people who rule over us, who use violence all the time. And I think it applies in this case too, of this murder of this healthcare executive.
Yeah, one of the first things that I ever saw you do was the video where you confronted Chris Coons on the train.
Yeah.
Thanks. And I said, wow, this is very impressive. And he has to talk to you and answer your questions.
Well, he had no choice. We were literally sitting like this across from each other. So,
but can't he like move cars or something?
Well, he could have moved cars, but I was filming him, and I'm sure he thought about it in the moment. He didn't want to have the optics of like fleeing the scene as I'm confronting about why he's supporting the murder of children, the mass murder of children in Gaza.
Sure.
So
now I got to tell you this. I had a dad who hit me, so I think I would be afraid to ever do something like that. I would be in my little Italian brain. I'd be like, this senator is going to hit me with his belt if I bother him.
Well, so I certainly can't. I can't pretend that I was nervous. It was like, it's awkward. Like you're sitting across from someone.
You can't pretend you weren't nervous.
I was totally nervous.
You were nervous. Okay. Okay.
But I had no choice. He's sitting like literally, I sat down in my seat. Chris Coons is right there. And I had to double check first that he's not just like some generic looking white guy.
Yeah.
He looks pretty. So I Google imaged him, and I was like doing.
So you didn't know he was going to be on the train, or
no. He was I just sat right in front of him. But this was about a year ago. This is in mid-November. So we're about a month at this point into the genocide, and he's a close ally of President Biden. He's, calling for arming Israel as it slaughters thousands of innocent people. And so I had to say something. So I took some deep breaths, and then I just turned on my phone and I filmed him, and I asked him politely. I was pretty polite.
Yeah.
And also, we're in the quiet car, which he tried to cite to get me to shut up. He's like, we're in the quiet car. He said, you're breaking the rules of the quiet car.
Okay.
But actually, if you listen to me, I'm speaking in a hushed tone.
Yeah.
So I was actually respecting the rules of the quiet car. So I don't even think he had me on that.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, he, by contrast,
can't do anything.
Well, exactly. He was breaking international law, I think, by supporting mass murder.
Sure.
But,
Yeah. That's a good point. All he had was the rules of the quiet car.
All he had was a quiet car. And then finally, he asked for help from an attendant, and they were like, and then they asked me to move seats, which I did.
Yeah.
So I moved seats, but then he passed by me again, and by that point, I tweeted out the video, and it had gone viral. And I think just the sight of seeing me, plus knowing it, the video was like blowing up on Twitter. Then he got me kicked off the train. Like at the next stop, I was asked to leave the train.
Okay.
So that was that.
But he didn't have any security with him or anything like that. I guess people don't really know who their senators are.
He didn't have, in fact, he actually went when he went to the restroom. He left his laptop there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he left it, like, which speaks to his. I thought it was kind of sweet. Like you're like a senator, and like you're so trusting of the public, and maybe you're so civic minded. You don't think someone's going to do something to your, like, bad security on his part. Mm-hmm. But he did not have any security with him.
It's interesting because, and I've talked about this on the show a couple times before, but I did see Chuck Schumer at a street fair in Brooklyn where I live, and he was just kind of like walking around, wearing as he does, wearing shorts, and I was like, I said, oh, he's right there, and I had my dog with me, and it was like a similar thing. I said, I have to say something, or I'm going to regret it, and I walked past him, but my heart was like pounding.
Sure, yeah, it's awkward.
Yeah. But it's weird because I walked past him and I said, let's stop the baby killing. I looked him right in the eye. I said, let's stop the baby killing. And then I walked, I kept walking and ran home because I was with my family. So I was like, I don't want to get them in trouble,
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, it's like there's such I don't know, powerful people are like, you don't think they're going to be right there.
I know.
Isn't it weird?
It is totally weird. One time I was walking in Brooklyn, and I saw Samantha Power. This was like well before the Gaza genocide. This is probably about a year or two before. Mm-hmm. But at that point, Samantha Power's rap sheet included like supporting the genocide in Yemen, supporting the destruction of Libya, the dirty war in Syria. Mm-hmm. At this point, Julian Assange was still behind bars. And so I froze up and I started thinking, like, what should I have to talk about, Yemen or Julian Assange? And I started like,
you said you're ugly.
No, well, never. No. But I started thinking about like, what's going to be my question? I'm sitting there, I'm like frozen. I'm thinking, and I'm thinking about it.
Your pussy stinks.
No, never. And then
we can anything you want to cover.
No, it's fine. No.
Okay.
But anyway, I thought about my question for so long that I missed my chance because she got into an Uber, and then and then like she just drove past me, and I was just there and like kind of frozen like this, like kind of
I blew it.
Yeah, I felt bad about that, but with Chris Coons, when he's right across from me and there's a genocide going on, then I had no choice.
Yeah. It's just interesting because you would think there would be more pushback. I mean, these people do get confronted all the time. People bother Pelosi.
Yeah.
And she goes, you're Chinese.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Code Pink was asking her about the genocide in Gaza because she was at a hearing about allegations of a genocide in China, in Xinjiang against the Uyghurs, which I think are not...
it's not real.
I mean, there's repression against the Uyghurs, but call it a genocide. I mean, look at Gaza.
Well, they have to do something. They have to say something, right? They have to give.
Well, they need. Yes, I think they're using this because China is a geopolitical rival. But so Code Pink was calling out the hypocrisy of like being concerned about a genocide allegedly in Xinjiang, but not the genocide in Gaza, which is happening before our eyes. And like in Xinjiang, you have repression, you have people put in camps. In Gaza, you have a besieged death camp where people are being slaughtered by the tens of thousands. And Nancy Pelosi was just like, you're funded by China. And she said, we would have common ground if you could speak out about Xinjiang. But it's obvious one of the reasons why I think the allegations like this are put forward is so they can distract from the actual genocides like in Gaza that we are supporting. But it's hard to confront people in person. Recently, about a week ago, I saw someone in person.
Because I feel like you're a guy who does it all the time.
Well, I do it on Twitter, right? I do it on Twitter, or I do it like if I happen to debate someone over Zoom.
Yeah.
But in person, it's a lot more awkward. So
it is.
Recently, I saw someone in person who I had. In fact, this happened a few times recently. I've seen people in person who I fought with on Twitter, like really bitterly, bitterly, like name, like you know what I mean. And this happened to me.
Find pictures of their kids.
Yeah. Well, I haven't gotten that far, but but twice in the last 2 months, I've seen people in person that I thought was on Twitter, and like in person, it's like, oh, hey, how you doing?
Really?
You know, yeah, it's like all tough friendly. Because who wants to, you know, in person, you're confronted with another human being, and it takes away that the shield that Twitter offers. So what I'm saying is there's something cowardly about fighting online, and something easy about it that I'm not prepared to always do in person.
Or fighting over text.
Or fight. Well, yeah, well, that's a lot easier too. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's why in the mafia they're like, oh, we got to arrange a sit down. You know, because if you and I had beef, you know, we got to just get in the room together.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But I guess I'm wondering, like, this CEO, I'm sure he didn't feel like his life was in danger or anything, or there was any kind of.
His wife claims that he had gotten threats. Yeah, yeah. But certainly, yeah, if you're going to like an investors conference in Midtown Manhattan,
they know
I
wonder do you know what the threats were about? I mean, probably just.
I don't know, but I know that his wife said, and let's keep in mind, this guy has a wife and a family, and it's, you know, it's horrible, and it's
could you imagine if your dad got killed and like you can't even log on to the internet because
it's horrible. It's horrible. Yeah, I mean the discourse online that people are coming forward. It's like empower people to come forward with their stories about how they've been screwed over by the insurance companies. Who denied them, you know, really important care or denied care to someone who's lost their life, like a loved one. It's, you know, and me coming from Canada, it's still crazy to me that not everybody has healthcare. It's just like, you know, and the system just. It's terrible. Like when I
you are a really compassionate guy. I'm used to being around comedians. We're such pieces of shit. We're such pieces of shit. Like, yeah, good. I wonder.
Yeah, well, but that's what makes you guys funny. You know, is you can find, you know, like you find the absurdity and the levity in anything, even a murder, which not everybody can do.
Yeah. I wonder if this is gonna inspire, because there's a weird thing where it's like, you know, obviously I would never kill Chuck Schumer, you know, but I don't think people would, because you're like, well, yeah, but I'm in the middle of a Nathan For You rewatch. So it's like there's too much stuff that would make you. Nobody wants to go to prison.
No,
forever.
certainly not.
Nobody wants to. It's like you can't get away with any crimes nowadays. I don't know if this guy's going to get away with.
Well, so far, I mean, that's what's crazy. It's on camera, and they've released photos of him. There's a lot of talk about how attractive he is. You know,
sure.
He
looks like you a little bit.
You think so? Well, I mean, I'm flattered on the one hand, but I also want to make sure. I want to make clear it's not me. I'm not him. But he. But he got away. Apparently, got on a city bike, went into Central Park, and hasn't been seen since.
I'm trying to keep my wife away from the photos. I don't want her, you know, getting all excited.
But if you have to lose your wife to somebody, I mean, that would be a pretty great story. Yeah, you know, the guy who murdered a health insurance.
I go to their wedding in a few years. I speak at their wedding. I just want to say I'm not mad at all. I'm really happy for you guys. I'm glad she found the man she always. I'm glad she found the go-getter that she always wanted. You know? But I wonder if more stuff like that is gonna happen, because I mean, these kinds of things are inevitable, right? I mean, Fetterman's, you know, just Fetterman, all these people who just deserve that kind of, you know. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying, like, these things happen, right? When people get upset. And so I don't know how they are going to be like, hey, don't do this.
In a society that deprives people of the basics that everyone needs for a healthy, happy life, like job security, health care, you know, safety. Yeah, you're going to encourage vigilante acts like this, or people who lash back. It's like out of a dystopian movie. So I guess we shouldn't be surprised at something like this in a society where you can profit off of people dying, you know, because you deny them health care. And we'll see. I mean, who knows? Like, you never want to make too many assumptions. Sometimes we think someone did something for a political reason, and it turns out they're just mentally ill, and that was the only factor. But the fact that on the casings he writes, you know, deny, delay, depose, I mean, that's very chilling.
Right. And you never know if that guy maybe lost a loved one, or,
you know, exactly,
a kid or something.
That's what you suspect, right?
Yeah.
That's what you suspect. And then it's like a movie. You know, now we're in like the this is like a bona fide movie here. You know, like someone who takes revenge for a loved one's.
Yeah.
And then, you know, in some movies,
It'll be a Lifetime movie.
Well,
my wife is watching. So you mentioned earlier that you have some friends in Gaza. What I guess, like, I don't know. I think about what's happening over there, and it seems like it's not like it. Are there any new developments, or are there any changes, or is it just this business? Is it the same? Is it the same?
It's the same thing. It's worse. You know, the Biden administration recently threatened Israel that unless you let more aid in, we're gonna,
we're gonna build another pier.
Well, exactly. Like we're gonna take on specified action. And the deadline came. Of course, Israel had made things worse, and Biden did nothing. And is Trump going to be any different? No. So it's just a continuous massacre of a besieged death camp where people can't flee. And now Hezbollah has been taken out of the equation because Hezbollah was forced into accepting a ceasefire because their intervention, which went on for more than a year, it ultimately didn't succeed. And Israel went crazy in Lebanon, you know, bombing entire neighborhoods, causing over 1 million refugees. And so Hezbollah had to back off. And so now Gaza is back on its own. And there are still some clashes, like some Israeli soldiers are still involved in fighting, but mostly it's just bombing from afar, bombing defenseless people from afar. There's even I don't know if you saw the image of the Israeli soldier looking over Gaza as it's being bombed, and he's pleasuring himself. I don't know if you saw that picture.
I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, this is who these people are. We're dealing with a sick society that has a full green light from its chief sponsor in Washington. So
yeah, and now Hezbollah is pretty much out.
Yeah, they're out.
Yeah,
they're out.
Yeah.
And
but Israel's violated.
Exactly, because Israel insists on having a monopoly on violence. That's like how they were created, and that's how they've sustained themselves, by taking more territory and using violence against anybody who dares to raise their heads. That's the Israeli mentality. And so Hezbollah has been weakened. And now in Syria, you have insurgents who were able to capture territory initially because of the U.S.-backed dirty war, where the U.S. spent billions of dollars arming an insurgency they knew was dominated by Al-Qaeda. And now, you know, the newest version of Al-Qaeda, it's changed its name, but it's led by the founding leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria, a guy named al-Jilani, who's also the former deputy to the founding leader of ISIS. So that's who's leading the insurgents now in Syria. He's taking advantage of the fact that Israel has hurt Hezbollah, which is a key ally of Syria, and also that Syria has been decimated by a dirty war and by sanctions imposed by the U.S. and the U.S. military occupying, valuable parts of Syria. And also Israel's also bombed Syria hundreds of times in recent years. So Al-Qaeda, or what's called now Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, it's like rebranded Al-Qaeda. They've taken full advantage, which is another huge blow to Hezbollah, because one of the main reasons for the dirty war in Syria, in the eyes of the U.S. and Israel, was to destroy a key member of the Axis of Resistance, because Syria helps Hezbollah get weapons. And if Assad falls, then that's a huge win for Israel and the U.S. And as we're recording this, the insurgents, the rebels, quote unquote, are making big gains. So Hezbollah is, they've taken a really big hit.
And now Al-Qaeda, they're just still like a group of guys. Like
they're a group of guys. Yeah.
But like, what are they?
Well, they claim they're no longer. So they're founded by a guy named al-Jilani, who he fought the U.S. in Iraq. He was the former deputy to the founder of ISIS, al-Baghdadi. And he spent time actually in a U.S. military prison in Iraq. And he gets out and he joins ISIS. And then ISIS decides to expand to Syria. So Jilani goes from Iraq into Syria and founds the Al-Qaeda franchise in Syria known as al-Nusra. And then him and Baghdadi supposedly have a split. And Jilani switches his allegiance from Baghdadi, who's now the emir of ISIS, to Zawahiri, who's the leader of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. And but since then it gets awkward, because the insurgency that the U.S. was supporting were supposedly arming moderate rebels, right?
In Syria.
In Syria, yeah. But Jilani's forces, which are Nusra, they quickly established themselves as the dominant force. And in fact, they're even cooperating and fighting alongside the insurgents who the U.S. is arming. There's something called the Free Syrian Army, which is basically a creation of the CIA.
Right.
And the Free Syrian Army is basically fighting alongside Nusra, the Al-Qaeda franchise, and giving them weapons that they got for the CIA. Sometimes Nusra fights Free Syrian Army guys, takes their weapons. Like, it's a little chaotic. Yeah. But eventually, in 2015, Al-Qaeda leads a assault on the province of Idlib, and they do it with the support of the CIA. Like, the CIA is basically helping the people they're fighting alongside, which giving them tow missiles and other U.S. weaponry, and that helps Al-Qaeda take over Idlib and establish what Brett McGurk, who is now a senior official under Biden, called Al-Qaeda's largest safe haven since 9/11. So that's us. We helped create Al-Qaeda's largest safe haven since 9/11, and it's in Idlib that they've been in since 2015, and just recently, just last week.
We spent all that time trying to get them out of Afghanistan.
Yeah, well, meanwhile, we're supposedly fighting Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, although, then it becomes mostly the Taliban, which is different than Al-Qaeda. But anyway, and so we helped set up this Al-Qaeda safe haven because it was more important for us to destroy a government that was part of the Axis of Resistance. And it's from Idlib, this Al-Qaeda safe haven, that then Al-Qaeda, which has now changed its name multiple times to now it's Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, that they launched this offensive. They take Aleppo, now they're taking Hama, and they're probably going to take more territory.
And that's the main opposition in Syria.
That is the main opposition in Syria, and they're the rulers of that province of Idlib from which they launched this latest offensive, and they're basically Al-Qaeda under a different name. The guy, like, Jelani's cut his beard, okay, and he wears like a suit now. He doesn't wear like robes anymore. He wears a suit. He cut his beard, but it's and they say they no longer have ties to Al-Qaeda. But he also said when he initially was breaking up with Al-Qaeda, he said to them, like, look, I have to do this or else the West is gonna bomb us. So we need to go through this rebranding, basically.
Yeah.
And that's why under Al-Qaeda's rule in Idlib, the Christian population went from like 1,200 to 3 people because they were forced out. Druze were massacred. Child soldiers were used. It's a mess. But again, just like the U.S. did in Afghanistan, where we supported the Mujahideen in the 1980s, who became Al-Qaeda, because for us it was more important to defeat the Soviet Union. Same thing here now in Syria. We've looked the other way as Al-Qaeda has become the strongest fighting force, had a stronghold, and now they're taking advantage. It's blowback.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's like, when you watch The Sopranos and you go like, oh, these are all awful people, but I want to like root for somebody.
Yeah.
So you're like, I guess I'll root for Johnny Sack.
Yeah, sure.
He loves his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
like, who do you, because I was reading about Syria a little bit today. Yeah. It's like, who do you root for? Because Assad is governing Syria, and then he's allied with Russia and Hezbollah. And then there's the opposition forces, but then people, I saw you retweeted something where people accuse you of being like an Assadist or something, but he's bad. He used the chemical weapons or something, or?
Well, he's accused of that, and we can get into that. I've done a lot of work to challenge that allegation, because I think that's basically another Iraq WMD level hoax where you accuse someone of having weapons of mass destruction, committing these atrocities, and that's called atrocity propaganda to manufacture consent for war, as it was done with Iraq. And I based my work on leaked documents from the OPCW, but we can get into that in a second. But look, in terms of choosing sides, I choose the side of, first of all, I never choose the side of Israel and the CIA.
Right.
That's like a default rule for me.
Okay.
And Israel and the CIA have armed these anti-government insurgents for their own interests. And I just think if you're on the same side of Israel and the CIA, you should step back and think about the implications of that. But moreover, I'm on the side of state sovereignty. And what right do we have to arm an insurgency inside Syria? Like what, like look at January 6th, the freak out about a 3-hour riot on Capitol Hill, and this was like a huge threat to democracy. So we freak out about an insurrection that lasted 3 hours.
Right.
Yet we give ourselves the right to go and arm insurgents in Syria. And you know who, like Joe Biden even said this once, there was no moderate opposition in the middle in Syria. It's not like dentists and shopkeepers going to fight the government. It's people who aren't even Syrian, a lot of them coming from around the world to fight jihad. And whenever we get on the side of that, like in Afghanistan, it's horrible. It's horrible for the country, and there's also blowback too because it helped lead to 9/11.
Right.
So it's not our right to do that. We wouldn't let Syria.
How did that lead to 9/11 if we were giving them the weapons?
Well, because we armed the Mujahideen to use them against the Soviet Union and to bleed the Soviet Union to prolong their presence there actually. Then the Mujahideen includes people like Osama bin Laden, and our support for them helps them establish a stronghold inside Afghanistan and other places, which they then use. If you believe that Al Qaeda carried out 9/11, I know for some people that's controversial, but I happen to believe it.
Okay,
that helps lead to Al Qaeda carrying out 9/11 because now they're a movement. They have a place to do it from. That just like Al Qaeda in Syria had the province of Idlib to organize from. And look, it's like there was no even debate over it. Jake Sullivan, who's Biden's national security advisor, there's an email from February 2012. He writes to Hillary Clinton. He says, Al Qaeda is on our side in Syria. And so 10 years after 9/11, we're siding with the movement that attacked the U.S. And why?
Yeah.
Because do we care that it's because Assad is authoritarian? Yeah. No, because we're arming and enabling authoritarians around the world, including in the Middle East. So it's not about that at all. It's about the fact that Assad was a part of a bloc that resists Israel and resists U.S. hegemony. And that's why he's been targeted for regime change. It's just so obvious. There's plenty of documents about this that make this very clear that Assad's a problem because he helps support Palestinians resisting Israel. But the problem there is then Hamas breaks from Assad during this time. And that's where it gets very complicated. There's a split inside the Palestinian community about this. And it's tough. Assad certainly is an authoritarian. It's an authoritarian system. Like basically before the war in Syria, you had a country that had among the highest levels of education, healthcare, food self-sufficiency in the region. It also didn't have.
It was always Assad and then his dad before that.
His dad, yeah, exactly. Okay. But the deal was like if you criticized the government, you would get in trouble. There was not like freedom of expression as we have. That was pretty clear. Like that was but then the problem there is, so Syrians, that's for them to take care of.
Right. Our imagine if there was like a Maté country, like a Maté land, and it was like your dad and then you.
Yeah.
And but you'd probably get messed with by
that's the thing.
The West would try to fuck with you.
And that's it. And when the West fucks with you, which is the thing, that enables authoritarianism because if you open it up too much, the U.S. will take advantage of that by spending all the money in the world on like media outlets and NGOs. They do this everywhere. Ukraine, Venezuela, all throughout Central America in the 80s, and then you get undermined. So to protect your sovereignty, there is the incentive there to shut things down to like to prevent outside meddling, which is a constant problem with the U.S. But the U.S. always operates on this belief that we have the right to impose what we want to. And they look at Cuba. Cuba's been under torture for 60 years now. Does anybody think Cuba threatens the national security of the U.S.? No, it's because they want to be independent and chart their own course. So they've been made to suffer for it. But for the people, it's the people who suffer, and it's the people in Syria who've suffered. Because when the U.S. imposes sanctions, it's not Assad who suffers; it's his people. U.S. officials brag about this, that our sanctions have exacerbated food shortages. Andrew Tabler said that he worked under Trump in the State Department. He helped design the sanctions, so they brag about this. And the thinking is, if the people suffer enough, they'll turn on their government eventually, and they'll help us overthrow them. Yeah. And I think actually right now in Syria, you're seeing that people are just tired. They lived through a decade-long dirty war. They live under these miserable sanctions that are designed to prevent them from rebuilding. Like that's like explicitly the goal of U.S. sanctions is to deny. And they're tired. And so eventually, after so many years of taking all this, you kind of give up.
I was in Madrid and I had a Syrian cab driver, and he was like the nicest guy. He spoke a little bit of English, and he was like, "Yes, family is very most important thing. I have 2-year-old and I have another kid on the way." And and he talked about, he's mentioned the war a little bit, and that whole thing always seemed very complicated to me. But I guess it's not that.
Well, listen, it's a very divisive issue. You have people who really hate the government in Syria. Like I've never seen an opposite, like an exiled community more hateful of their home government than in Syria. So. Okay. And that's partly, you have people, you have Syrian elites who just want to take over the country and rule it for themselves. That's their motive. Similar with like Ahmed Chalabi in Iraq, who, but then you have people who have suffered in the government. There's torture in prisons. There's repression. Dissidents are in prison for for a long time. That's all true. So you have legitimate grievances. But then the question is, when you have a repressive government, when you have an authoritarian government, is the answer to side with the CIA and Israel, who are arming an insurgency that is dominated by Al-Qaeda and ISIS as well?
Yeah.
I mean, and the fact is, my concern as a Westerner, it's not my business who rules Syria. And it's not my business I'm responsible for what my government does. And nobody in Syria voted for Donald Trump or Joe Biden to bomb their country and arm insurgents and impose sanctions that raise the cost of bread.
Right.
And how is that in anybody's interest but, people who want to control the world for themselves? So
it'd almost be like if aliens funded January 6th, if there was like a more powerful race of aliens, and they gave them all weapons, like laser guns.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we would not be happy if Russia or Syria armed January 6th
or
guys.
Aliens.
Or aliens. But yet we give ourselves the right to do that. And I just don't, I'm not on board with that.
Yeah, it's hard because is there anybody that you root for? Is there anything that you root for? I mean, sovereignty, I guess.
I mean, yeah, I root for anybody resisting imperialism or oppression. I mean, I have friends who protested the Syrian government back in 2011, but they didn't want regime change because they knew that basically what their options were. It was basically Assad, or it was the Muslim Brotherhood, or even worse, Al-Qaeda. And they would rather have Assad because Assad at least protects the minorities of Syria, the Christians, the Druze, the Shia. But they wanted reform because the government is corrupt, and they wanted more freedom. They wanted freedom of expression because they didn't have that. So, I mean, I root for them. But if it comes down to, do I
think the war crime stuff is like questionable?
Well, then you have a situation where so then you have the chemical weapons allegations, and they come after Obama says there's a red line that if we, I'm not, because he's being pressured to, he's already approved a program to spend billions of dollars arming an Al-Qaeda dominated insurgency, but it's not enough. So he's being pressured now to intervene directly on Al-Qaeda's side. And be Al-Qaeda's air force in Syria. And he doesn't want to do that because he knows exactly who the insurgents are. He talks about the moderate rebels. Again, Jake Sullivan wrote to Hillary Clinton, Al-Qaeda is on our side. And if Jake Sullivan's writing that to Hillary Clinton, he's telling that to Barack Obama as well. So they knew who the quote unquote rebels were dominated by. He's facing pressure to be their air force. He doesn't want to do that. And so he makes some comment which wasn't planned about how the only way I'd intervene is if there were chemical weapons being moved around. And by the way, he says it's not about the government, just the government. He also says if the government and other actors start using chemical weapons, and that's a reflection. I think that he knew at that point the rebels were trying to acquire and produce chemical weapons. But anyway, that gets then seized on by people who want regime change. People like John McCain, who's foaming at the mouth to overthrow Assad. Right. And they, and as one U.S. ambassador put it in an article that was in Harper's Magazine a few years ago by Charles Glass, a veteran journalist covering the Middle East, this U.S. ambassador, who he wasn't named, but he's a former U.S. ambassador to a Middle Eastern country. And he says the red line was an open invitation to a false flag. And it's obvious why, because if Obama is saying, I'm only going to intervene under this one condition, then that incentivizes the people who want U.S. intervention to bring that condition about. And so you have these allegations of chemical attacks by Syria, and there's been like now dozens of them, or even hundreds of allegations, but the major ones are in 2013, then in 2017 and 2018. If you just look at those cases alone, first of all, you have to use elementary logic. Why would Assad do the one thing that he knows would trigger
the red line?
U.S. military intervention? And who has the incentive to actually do it? It's the people who want U.S. to intervene. So just without even looking at the facts, you just have to use logic there.
Okay,
like common sense. But then you have in those three major cases: 2013, which is Ghouta; 2017, which is Khan Sheikhoun; 2018, which is Duma, and that's the case I've worked on. You have in every single case leaks from Western sources that completely undermine the allegation. Seymour Hersh did a whole bunch of reporting on 2013, and even putting his work aside, James Clapper, who was Obama's director of national intelligence, as Obama was pondering what to do in 2013 to bomb Syria, James Clapper went to Obama and said to him, yeah, the intelligence that Syria is guilty is not a slam dunk. And slam dunk, for those who know the history of the Iraq War, that's what George Tenet, who was Bush's CIA director, said to Bush about the intelligence on Iraq WMDs. So James Clapper deliberately invoked the Iraq WMD scam to basically tell Obama that the intelligence was not there, and that if he bombed Syria over this, he'd be bombing on false grounds and also helping an Al-Qaeda dominated insurgency. Right. So that's why Obama pulled back. And there were many other leaks coming from inside the White House at the time, because people saw the intelligence and they knew that it did not show that the Syrian government was guilty. And then there's many other things. There's studies done that, I've covered this, where people looked at the range of the rockets that were fired, and they show that the rockets only could have been fired. The rockets that delivered the sarin only could have been fired from insurgent-controlled territory. So, but there's a whole, it's like you go through a big rabbit hole to get into that one. Then you have Duma 2018, and this is when Trump bombed Syria after Syria is accused of chemical weapons. And this is a story that I've covered, and this is why people call me names, because they don't like what I've done. But what I've done is report on leaked documents from the OPCW, the world's top chemical weapons watchdog. Publicly, the OPCW, after they went to Duma, where Syria was accused of a chemical attack, publicly the OPCW put out a report that basically backed up the U.S. narrative that Syria was guilty of a chemical attack. But then we got a whole bunch of leaks from inside the OPCW from really brave whistleblowers, which showed that the actual team that went to Duma did not reach that conclusion at all. They actually found no evidence of a chemical attack. If you read their findings, there's a lot of speculation in there that this was staged by insurgents on the ground. And that evidence was suppressed and it was doctored. And I've covered those leaks extensively. I've written like more than 12 articles on it. Nobody ever challenges anything I write. They just call me names. And I've spoken about it publicly at the UN at the invitation of Russia and China. And they don't like that I went there at the invite of Russia and China. But I went there because I'm trying to get the truth out about a Iraq WMD level scam, which was accusing a government of chemical weapons use to justify military strikes by Donald Trump, who people, generally oppose, but all of a sudden when he bombs Syria, everybody cheers. And it's not just bombing Syria. They've also used these chemical weapons allegations to justify sanctions that make life miserable for ordinary Syrians, that raise the price of bread and fuel and all the staples of life. So that's why it's important to cover. And it also shows how these organizations can be corrupted in the service of U.S. hegemony. And these whistleblowers who exposed all this, they took a huge risk challenging a cover-up of their investigation. But if you look at U.S. media, they're never acknowledged. It's like they don't exist. And the reason is obvious. This narrative of Syria being guilty of chemical weapons, it's so important to the propaganda campaign to manufacture consent for the dirty war that these whistleblowers who exposed this allegation as a scam, they can't even be acknowledged. If they were wrong, what would happen was the Washington Post or New York Times would say, these whistleblowers say this, but here's why they're wrong. They never do that. They don't even acknowledge their existence. So one example, there's a Washington Post reporter named Joby Warwick, where he wrote a whole book about Syria and chemical weapons. It's called Red Line, okay? He published it in like 2020 or 2021. This is like years after the Duma incident happened and after the OPCW whistleblowers became known. He ends his book, he says, and then in April 2018, there was a chemical attack in Duma, and the OPCW later on confirmed that the Syrian government was guilty. The end. He doesn't even mention that whistleblowers who did the investigation, who went to Duma, said, hey, our investigation was censored, and our actual findings were that this was not a chemical attack, and that this was likely staged by the insurgents on the ground. Joby Warwick of the Washington Post, who's like the main guy in chemical weapons in the U.S. media, doesn't even acknowledge that this happened. So that's the Orwellian system we live under to manufacture consent for war. And that's why I'm called an assadist, because I talk about this stuff and I report on the leaked documents that have the evidence.
Wow. I can't believe that you respect comedians.
You could call me a chuckle chaser, or I just to me, it's like the highest art to make people laugh.
Okay.
It works wonders for me. It's cathartic for me. And, I think it's a real gift.
But you just know so much stuff.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
If they could meld me and you and be
I'd love it. Hey, are you kidding?
Imagine. Yeah.
I'd sign up for that in a second with your humor and my facts that I know. Hey.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Unfortunately, no one's found the right combo yet of someone who has both. I mean, George Carlin, he knew a lot of stuff.
He knew a lot of stuff. Yeah. I don't know if he was the funniest. I mean, he was funny, but I wouldn't describe him as like I don't find him as funny as like, Patrice or Martin Lawrence or something.
He is a little didactic too. He kind of is giving a sermon sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to talk about stand-up a little bit?
Sure. Yeah.
Have you seen any?
I've seen a bunch of stand-up.
Like lately?
I saw Dan Soder recently.
Yeah.
That was a hilarious show.
You saw him live?
Saw him live.
Yeah. I opened for him a few weeks ago.
Nice.
And it was, it's great to like, it's great to watch him work. You know,
I think he's one of the best. He's so good. And his story is really interesting. You know what he's gone through in his life with his family background, and he gets great material, great material from it.
He's one of those guys too. You watch him do an hour, and you go like, you know, he comes off as like, you know, he'll wear like a t-shirt on stage and stuff, but you can tell a lot of thought has gone into the work and the material and the how he says it and everything. You know, it's like, I don't know, stand up looks so easy, but
it does.
But yeah,
it does. But I know it's a lot of work behind it. To build an hour takes.
Yeah.
No,
I've barely done it the past couple months. I've been all in on podcasting.
Your special was how long?
It ended up being like 49.
49. Okay. Yeah. How long did it take you to build that?
A while. I mean, the last one I did was in like the last album I did was 2015, but like COVID happened and I took some time off, and then you know, it was like gradually getting back in. And
but the YouTube special you put out not too long ago.
That was
That was 2015? No.
I had an album in 2015.
Yeah.
So it was about 8 years between the two.
Okay, yeah.
The 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I should be producing more stand up.
Well, hey, man, it's you know, having tried stand up before, like myself, I tried to get up and it was a disaster. So I really respect it. So yeah, I saw Dan Soder and I saw Louis at the Cellar.
You did.
He was doing like new material, so.
Okay.
It's still very much he was obviously like working out new stuff, but I mean, he's a genius. It was great to see. And I didn't see her live, but the most recent special I listened to was Adrienne Iapolucci.
Yeah, she's very good.
The Dark Queen. I think she's a genius.
Oh, you think she's a genius?
So funny.
Okay.
So funny. And again, none of these people I'm naming endorse my politics, you know.
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
But
she did your podcast recently.
She did. Yeah, she did. Yeah, she did. I think she's hilarious.
Nice. Yeah, I was thinking about this. It seems like you only get kind of there's a weird thing that stand up is very popular right now, and there's kind of a weird thing that's happening where it's like you only get a short window of being like really good, where people are paying attention to you and liking what you do, because it's easy to kind of it's easy to develop a fan base and then end up like pandering to the fan base.
Sure,
I feel like that's
in media too. In media too, like you have your audience and then you know what they want, and you're scared to piss them off. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you ever go like maybe I'm not anti-imperialist?
No. Okay. No. Although I don't really. It's not like I don't think of. I identify as a journalist. I just like facts. Like I like to know what the truth is.
Okay.
And it happens. Yeah, I do happen to have.
You say that's what motivates you?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't identify as an even though I am anti-imperialist. It's not. It's not my conception of who I am. I like the truth.
Okay.
And I like to expose lies that are used to justify horrible things like war and sanctions.
Yeah.
But
so would you say uncovering facts is what kind of like keeps you going? That's what motivates.
Yeah. I just like to know what's going on. Like, and I like to know, and like, there's always an agenda and everything. So I like to know what the actual agenda is. What the actual, you know, it's interesting to me how people are manipulated into supporting things that are horrible, like wars and sanctions, and you know, here into a system that's so unfair. And how are we manipulated into going along with it? And I just, you know, I'm going to do what I can to shine a light in the limited ways in the limited areas that I work in on what really is true, and so people are informed enough to make decisions for themselves about what they want to support or not. I think that's important. That's what journalism to me should be, but unfortunately, it's not how it is.
Yeah. I turned on CNN today, and the first thing I saw was there was like a segment on a pro-Israeli influencer and how she's like kind of afraid that she's getting backlash for speaking out. I said, I can't believe
the poor thing.
Yeah, but isn't that funny? Everybody just kind of feels like a victim, I guess.
Well, certainly, in the Israeli mentality and in the North American Jewish community, there is this victim mindset, and I'm somewhat sympathetic to the extent it comes from the Nazi Holocaust.
Sure,
that's that
was bad.
That was bad, and I've seen it in my own family because my father's a survivor. It causes trauma, and but at this point now, especially after a year of genocide. You know, it's you can't play the Holocaust card anymore. The Holocaust card is being weaponized to justify a new Holocaust.
Right.
And there certainly is a big victim mentality. And I guess to be the oppressor and to carry out such unspeakable acts, you have to find ways to justify it to yourself. So one way is to be the victim. You're perpetually the victim. Everyone's out to get you. So therefore you have to go and starve kids in Gaza.
Yeah.
Right. A to B.
Yeah. What do you think of some of the Holocaust denial coming back? I mean, it's like very. I thought we were past that.
Holocaust.
Yeah, it's very bizarre because it's coming from people like, you'll see like somebody like Dan Bilzerian, and he'll say stuff about Israel and Gaza that you like agree with, and you go, wow, this guy really turned his life around.
Yeah,
and I wonder, I don't know if that's like some kind of op to discredit anti-Zionism or whatever, but I just really feel like I'm worried because I feel like the Holocaust denial is making a big.
It's making a big comeback. It is
a big comeback.
It is. Yeah. It is. I saw Candace Owens, some clip of her talking. She was like,
because I thought that was settled.
I thought it was settled too.
Yeah.
I thought it was settled too. But some clip of Candace Owens where she was like, we talk all the time about the Holocaust of the Jews, but how come we don't talk about the Holocaust of the Christians under the Bolsheviks? And I was like, what? Like, but I get it. When you see this, community, North American Jews having so much power because we do, it's just true, especially in media and,
Finkelstein said that too.
Yeah. And in Congress where AIPAC can like buy off Congress members and oust, black progressive Congress members, Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush.
Yeah.
When you see all this, you see all the double standards, you see college presidents being ousted because they didn't sufficiently crack down on anti-genocide students. I mean, and it's after Jewish billionaires threatened to pull their money. I mean, yeah, it develops. It's reasonable to come to the conclusion that, that there is a heavy measure of Jewish influence in society. Mm-hmm. And that when you see that, you then start making other leaps.
Yeah.
And that I think has helped fuel Holocaust denial. But Holocaust denial has been around for a very long time. I mean, there is this traditional anti-Semitism, which rooted in actual hatred of Jews.
But it felt like it was so fringe.
It was. I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's making a comeback. Yeah. It's hot right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 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 And of course, Zionists love it because then they can say, look at the, especially if someone supports Palestine.
Of course.
They can say, look at this Holocaust denier. Yeah. This must be every single person who supports Palestine. How could we possibly, engage with them? Because they're all Holocaust deniers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. There's another guy that I know that owns a comedy club, and I made a comment about I said, I'm anti-Zionist, but I'm not a Holocaust denier. And he was like, yeah, there's like 3 of you. But it's weird that now I have to look into all that stuff now. All the stuff they taught me in 8th grade, I have to go back and confirm it.
You want to revisit the Holocaust?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I
thought I knew all the stuff I needed to know about it.
Yeah. I mean, like the big thing like the sort of like moderate Holocaust deniers, like what they'll make a big issue out of the number of 6 million. They'll say it wasn't 6 million. Mm-hmm. But then I say, okay, if it wasn't 6 million, does it really matter? Like if it was 4 million or 5 million or 3 million, it's still a lot of people in an industrial slaughter. Mm. There's been nothing ever in history like the gas chambers.
Uh-huh.
And then they might say, oh, the gas chambers didn't exist. And then at that point, there's no point in engaging, if you're going to deny the gas chambers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're but that's a thing now. It is they're out there, and it's too bad because it serves the interest of Zionists to paint people who support Palestine as people who also
I feel like my entire
suffering of Jews.
Yeah, my entire For You page on Twitter is like Zionists and Nazis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like open.
Yeah. Thank you, Elon, for that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Free speech is back.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? But if you say like a caca word, they'll censor your account.
A caca word.
Yeah, like sometimes if you say like if you say asshole or something like that, or actually X isn't that bad about censorship, but Instagram is kind of, they crack down on.
Oh, I'm sure they do. Oh yeah,
on the naughty words.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta. I guess we're almost at an hour. But is there anything else is there anything you were like dying to talk about? Or did you want to?
I think we covered it all. Holocaust denial. Comedy, stand up.
So I saw today that the Hawk Tuah girl. She's involved in a cryptocurrency scheme.
Of course. Yeah.
Which is crazy because there's not a lot of good things in the world.
No.
Right. And then so there's this viral moment where a young girl talks about, sucking dick, which is nice. And then it's like, okay, we all paid attention to it. Oh, that's cool. She's cool. Who is this girl?
I don't even know
find her.
Is that why she's a thing? Because she did a video talking about sucking dick. That's why she's a thing. Okay, I didn't even know that.
Oh, you didn't know that?
Yeah, I've seen her name, Hawk Tuah, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay, that's her claim to fame. Okay,
so you don't really pay attention to current events, I guess.
I pay attention, just not that current event. Yeah.
You're not really like a cultural.
I mean, I try to say it, but in this case, I just saw Hawk Tuah, and there was nothing there for me to be interested in, so I just didn't.
Okay.
I never clicked any link, but
it was interesting. It was like one of those like man on the street guys, and he's like interviewing people, and he says, what's a move that makes a guy go crazy in bed? And she goes, you got to give it the Hawk Tuah and spit on it.
Oh, okay.
So she's talking about sucking. And like you go, oh, this girl's cool. She's nice. She's drunk. She's having a good time. She likes to suck dick.
Sure.
Getting your dick sucked is very nice. It's one of the
applause.
Like, there's not a lot of. Sure. I mean, every day, we're looking at massacres and natural disasters and genocide and bombings and stuff, and you forget that there's nice things in the world.
Yes.
Sometimes you meet a girl who sucks you off. Maybe there's a chance that your wife will at some point. But so it's like we all pay attention to this thing, and then she's got to go on. She's got to do a podcast. So she like goes on Whitney Cummings' podcast and Bill Maher's podcast, and Bill Maher like gave her advice on how to navigate show business.
That must have been cringe.
It's one of the worst.
Yeah,
it's one of the worst.
I can only
things I've
imagine.
ever seen. Yeah.
Was it like in his club random?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It was bad.
Yeah, that's tough.
And he's like. It's really bad. He's like hitting on her a little bit. Oh. It's like but you could tell he thinks he's like this cool, cool like older guy who smokes weed. But then it's like, okay, so she's got a podcast. She's got like the number 3. I think she's got the number 3 podcast
really in
the world behind Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan, I think. And I'm like, okay, so that's cool.
Yeah.
So you're making some good money from this podcast. Now, why can't you just do if you really like money that much, why can't you just do the podcast?
Sure.
Why can't you be happy with whatever it is, $200,000 a month, $1 million, whatever it is that you're making? I don't know what these people make. I haven't thought about it. I don't pocket watch.
Yeah.
I go, yeah, that's a nice little Patreon that we have there. I'm happy for it. And that's it. But it's just a weird, why do you have to do a crypto scam?
Everyone's getting in on it.
Yeah.
I never got in on the crypto thing. I have friends who have, and initially I remember everybody was making fun of them, like, you're such a chump, you're going to get fleeced. But now they're killing it. They're like,
well, it's always kind of all over the place.
I know, but I just heard that Bitcoin passed $100,000.
Passed 100,000.
Trump is considered to be very pro crypto. If you asked me to explain what Bitcoin, I couldn't do it.
Sure. I don't think anybody can.
Yeah, I can't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised.
It would be like you being like, we have a Maté coin.
Yeah, well, hey,
but it's like a pump and dump is what it is.
Yeah, well, that's the knock. But then the people, someone like Edward Snowden, really smart, heroic guy. Mm-hmm. I remember he was like, if you're not in on Bitcoin, then you're losing out, and this is like a grave mistake. And he's like, he's a really principled person.
Sure.
So it's one of those things where I just don't know who to believe. But
there's no utility.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Listen, I don't get. I can't explain it, but yet you see enough people who are in on it, and you're just wondering like what.
Yeah.
By the way,
I'll tell you what's cool though. I have a Shiba Inu. I have Shiba Inu coin.
Yeah.
I spent like $300, and I got 5 million of them.
You have 5 million Shiba Inu, so named after a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And it's a coin named after. Is this like a dog Bitcoin market, especially?
Yeah, it's like a cryptocurrency. It's Shiba Inu.
Shiba Inu. Okay.
Yeah. I bought it like years ago.
I do love
But I have 5 million of them.
5 million Shiba Inus. Okay. Well, hey. Yeah.
I mean, Johnny, do you have 5 million of anything?
No.
So that's what's pretty cool about it.
You're a Shiba Inu a multimillionaire.
I'm a multimillionaire of Shiba Inu.
Yeah.
Of this worthless coin.
Great dog though.
Is it?
It is a great dog. Yeah.
Yeah. We almost got one, and then we got a Shar-Pei.
A nice dog too.
Yeah. You have a dog?
No, I do not. No.
Okay.
No. I think New York City to have a dog is kind of crazy.
It is kind of crazy.
Unless you're a single man, or a single person, it's like a great way to meet people.
Then you got to pay for a walker. My dog's with my mom right now, and I feel much better. Yeah, because I had all day to get work done. But
so you have in-law privilege. So if you can dump off the dog with a loved one, fair enough. But if
yeah. but it's kind of like, yeah, I do feel super guilty when he's, when he's home.
Because he's not
just laying around in a small apartment.
Yeah, and like, where's he going to go? I mean, there's barely any green space.
Yeah.
And then there's resentment because there's, dog do on the sidewalk and people are upset about that. It's tough out there, but hey, that's what makes this city great is there's a place for dogs too.
Yeah. But happy wife, happy life.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But about the Hawk Tuah girl.
Yes.
It's like, like whatever she's making on the podcast, you got a heart out. Okay. Yeah. Whatever she's making on that podcast, whether it's $40,000 a month or $1 million a month or $100,000 a month, like you really need to think about your relationship with money. Mm-hmm. And it's got to be hard not to do the cash grab that's like right in front of you.
Yeah.
But why can't people just be happy with the amount of money that they have? And why can't we just enjoy a nice little meme about sucking dick? Why does it have to end up with a crypto scam?
Because that's America. When you get your 15 minutes of fame, you take it all the way. And you get a podcast and you start your own cryptocurrency. I mean, it makes perfect sense. It doesn't
seem like people know when to stop.
Well, of course not. I mean, that's capitalism. It's infinite growth.
Yeah.
There's a great Canadian environmentalist named David Suzuki, and he says the only two, the only two supporters of infinite growth are cancer and capitalism. Mm-hmm. And Hawk Tuah is she's just doing what we're all supposed to do. But I guess from her perspective, in her defense, if your claim to fame is that you said something about giving oral sex.
But she's a sweet girl. Uh-huh. And then the more podcasts she did, she was like, she's very funny. She's very charismatic. Her mother's a crackhead.
Oh, wow.
She had to drop out of school.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah. So in that situation, you're going to want to get what you can.
Yeah. She had to drop out of school to support her grandmother. Mm-hmm. But yeah, have you ever had like in The Simpsons when Krusty's like, they drove a dump truck of money up to my house.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to turn down large sums of money in your career?
One time to do a project, I was offered some funding from some, but I turned that down because I couldn't in good conscience accept it given the source of the funding.
Yeah.
This might fuel conspiracy theories about me. It wasn't a state. It was because people lie and say I'm funded by Russia or Syria or whatever else.
Okay.
Because they want to discredit the reporting I do. It was an individual, an American, but I just thought that it wouldn't be right to take that money. Yeah. So I didn't. That's the only time. There was a time when
I've never been offered any.
Yeah, exactly. There was a time when I tried to sell out. For a long time I was a producer at Democracy Now, and I left that show and. I didn't have a job, and also I learned pretty quickly that in Canada you have health insurance no matter what, and here if you leave your job, which I hadn't fully thought through, you don't have health insurance anymore. So anyway, and so I was like, I was trying to get a job, so I tried to work at MSNBC as a producer, and this was right before Russiagate, the whole and this is why many people know about me is because I was challenging Russiagate from the start. This dumb conspiracy theory that Trump was controlled by Vladimir Putin and. That was a big obsession for like 4 years. Now no one talks about it because it was so embarrassing and dumb. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but this was right before that. And so I was trying to work there as a producer, and I was totally, and CBS News as well. And I was like trying to sell out. Like I knew I'd have to go in and do bullshit things and things I didn't believe in. Yeah. But I needed a job, and I wanted to do something else after 10 years in the same place. So I tried, but they could like sniff me out pretty quickly that I was a lefty, and there's just no way.
Really?
Yeah. And so I never got, and then at a certain point when Russiagate blew up, I was still in consideration for one job at MSNBC at this point.
Being a lefty sucks.
It totally, if you want to earn a living, it's especially in media,
Are you in a decent place though? Or are you like
now? I'm in a great place, but so what happened was with when Russiagate blew up, and this was becoming like the thing on MSNBC, and every single hour now it was like Moscow has brainwashed Americans into voting for Trump, and they conspired in a big conspiracy, and Robert Mueller is going to solve the case. At that point, I was still up for a job that I wanted, but I was like, this Russiagate thing is such bullshit.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell the truth. And if I can't tell the truth, then there's no point in me being in journalism at all. So fuck it. So then I just gave up on that whole angle. And I decided to go hard and challenging Russiagate, which at the time was like a big thing to do because especially on the left, you just weren't supposed to challenge that thing, supposed to go along with it because it was the main weapon against Trump. But I thought it was a disaster. I thought it was A, it was factually completely baseless, and B, politically, I thought it was a big gift to Trump because what could be a better benefit for Trump than having his opposition obsessed with a dumb conspiracy theory rather than focus on his own policy? So I went hard on Russiagate, and that helped me have a little platform for myself, and I gained a very loyal audience who appreciates what I do. And so now I'm able to do what I do, and I have to worry about like censoring myself or modulating my message, which is great. I can just actually focus on doing the journalism I believe in.
Yeah, there's not a ton of people who are able to do that. So
I know. I feel very lucky. I feel very lucky.
Yeah. That's great. I guess to our listeners who want to find like good information and find the facts and uncover the truth, I mean, where do you recommend?
It's tough out there.
Yeah.
Well, if you like if you're interested in U.S. foreign policy, the outlet that I'm with, The Gray Zone, thegrayzone.com, I think is great. Does great reporting, stuff that other people frankly don't have the courage to do. Max Blumenthal is the founder of that and a great journalist and a great friend. I also host a podcast called Useful Idiots with Katie Halper. And in general, I'd recommend, what I recommend, I mean, there's so many great people who do great stuff. Someone who I actually want to plug is Michael Tracy, a friend of mine. He was accused of also being a Trumper because he went hard in challenging Russiagate and all the mania around that. But now, in terms of someone who's actually calling out, who's exposing Trump for being this con man who promises to take on the deep state while hiring a bunch of Israel First neocons, Michael Tracy's done a great job exposing that. And so I recommend, and he pisses everybody off. And I think,
I thought people didn't like him.
He pisses because he doesn't care about being liked. I mean, despite the reputation, I actually want to be liked. I do. It's just my natural default.
I mean, don't we all?
Yeah, sure. But he doesn't. He doesn't. He truly, and because of that, he's able to be really fearless. And so I want to give a shout out to him.
Nice. And I'm sure you don't probably align with every belief that he has.
No, certainly not. No. And we squabble plenty of times, but I think he's a great guy and a great journalist. And I just appreciate how he's willing to piss everybody off, no matter the consequence. That's a pretty rare quality.
Nice. So you don't ever feel like, oh, I read that and now I know this stuff, and what was the point? Like you're always in pursuit of finding the facts.
Yeah, no, like the point is just being truthful and being and even if it's not as appreciated as I would like at the time,
it's good to live an authentic life.
Yeah, it's good to live an authentic life. I can look at myself in the mirror and that's all I'm responsible for.
Right. Yeah. It does feel good. It is like a weight off your shoulders. Yeah. So that's it. Live an authentic life, everybody.
That's the message of this podcast. That's what we're here to promote. Yes. Live an authentic life.
Yeah. I looked at gay porn a couple times and I didn't really like it. But yeah, patreon.com/outforsmokes. I will be in Detroit tomorrow night, December 7th at the Independent Comedy Club. You can get tickets at MikeRacineComedy.com. That's a great room. I'm looking forward to it. It's a great city, fun city to do stand up in. So yeah, looking forward to that. We also got Florida and we got Minneapolis coming up. MikeRacineComedy.com, patreon.com/outforsmokes. And we'll see you either on Sunday on the Patreon or next week. Bye-bye.